Welcome to another edition of Unrendered on IKTV. I'm Tony Regisford, and my guest on this edition of the program is Mr. Oscar Allen. He is the chairman of the People's Movement for Change. Mr. Allen, Oscar as I shall call you, welcome to the studios of IKTV, and great pleasure to have you.
I am happy to be here. I think it's timely.
Very timely. Very timely, because I did a lot of fishing before to try to get you on this program, and your colleague, Ronnie Daniel, seemed to have managed to do that trick for me. So I'm very happy that he did.
Good.
Now, before we get into the substantive issues of the discussion today, let's look at the PMC and the structure of it. Okay, you were formed about 4, 5, 6 years ago?
That's right.
Right. And what is your structure? Who's the executive of the PMC?
Well, the PMC, when it was formed, began with a conversation among several people, 2 dozen or more, looking at the situation in our country and saying there is need for some forum to influence opinion among the people and among the leaders. We considered that to be something urgent, and so we launched ourselves as the People's Movement for Change at an event in the Peace Memorial Hall, where there were about 200 persons who warmly accepted us.
Yes.
We are generally a group largely active, about 12 or more persons, with a core that meets fairly regularly now.
So is there a formal executive, or it's just loosely?
It's a loose organization, but we have a chairman and a secretariat and a treasurer.
Right. So you're the chairman.
I am, yes.
And the secretary, you said?
Secretary is Ronnie Daniel.
Ronnie Daniel, okay. And then you have a treasurer who keeps account on whatever funds there are that you need to be spending.
Correct.
Right. And you're saying your objectives really is to guide or advance change, and I suppose positive change. And I know our viewers are probably anxious for me to get on with the business of your activity post-Christmas floods, and we will get there, but let me just ask you about the change that you seek to bring about. What do you think needs changing in our society?
Well, we call ourselves the People's Movement for Change, and people is a fundamental aspect of who we think should bring the change about. Currently, in our view, the situation makes people imprisoned in politics. So one of the things we would like to see is people becoming liberated from the structure of politics, basically the party structure. That would involve education. That will involve a lot of discourse to show people who they are and what their authority is and how it should be exercised.
Right.
And there are issues in the community, in the society, which don't get adequate attention. As a small group, we cannot fill that gap, but from time to time, we intervene to correct the orientation that the society gives to certain problems, whether it was police brutality some time ago, or now the storm and its aftermath.
Yes. I'm going to pick you up on the thing that you've identified in people understanding who they are. You say it calls for education, and I look at that as part of education, understanding who you are. And I know my business partner, Chester Connell, who's agriculture off the grid, and we do a program called Crab and Callaloo as well. I know we take a line that is not, dissimilar to a line that a lot of other people take. Maybe not enough people, and I'm just being bigoted when I say that. But understanding who you are is the first point in having meaningful conversation about what you want for yourself. And this is the line we push, and I'm just pulling you out to see how significant you think is the formal teaching, if you want, of Caribbean history, authentic Caribbean history, in the primary, secondary, and even the tertiary institutions. How important and how imperative is that to be done, in your view? If you're talking about bringing about change, and that may be a fundamental pillar in understanding how people can create the change.
Clearly, in most societies, the history becomes welded into the personality of the people. You take the Americans, and you can't divorce them and their destiny from their history. They think their history gives them a path in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I remember speaking to a Cuban some years ago, and it was a female. She said, "Soy cubana," and meaning, I am a Cuban, and said it with such force and vigor that it came from the bowels.
Yes, and she understood what Cuban meant,
yes.
Being a Cuban meant, yes.
I don't think from our formal education we get the power of what it means to be a Vincentian.
Or Caribbean.
Or Caribbean.
Caribbean national, yes.
Do you know? True, we say Vinci to the core, 100% Vinci, but that's an external label. Being 100% Vinci, what does that do to your character? So I agree with you that the teaching of history, important and necessary as it is, for a certificate, for a pass, doesn't do justice to firming us fully into the ground of the Vincentian and Caribbean world. And we need more than just the formal classroom and the certificate. I think at the tertiary level, people are beginning to examine the history more seriously. I remember speaking to a graduate who was saying he had done as his tertiary history project an investigation into the arrowroot industry.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd gone and done research and spoken to ministry persons and came up with a future for the arrowroot industry. I'm wondering whether, even from the primary and secondary schools, such projects cannot be done. Because there are grandmothers in the homes and in the villages. There are buildings, artifacts, factories,
Right.
which people can begin to look at differently. Not just a building, not just an old woman, but a law, a source of law.
Do you have a sense that there is a certain embarrassment that comes over people, Caribbean man, the Vincentian man and woman, an embarrassment about who we really are in terms of our heritage, our cultural practices, the fact that we're not born using a knife and fork, really. I mean, things like that. Do you think that we have been indoctrinated trying to be somebody else, and therefore embarrassed about who we really are, and there is a reluctance to accept who we are at our core? I don't know if I phrased the question
You
clearly
have
for
done
you.
so quite clearly, and it is a matter which I am afraid to discuss.
Why?
Because every day, our people deny themselves for who we are. I may do it less than you, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But we all are guilty of not wanting to be black, Caribbean, working people. Why I say so? I travel in the van today to come here,
Mm-hmm.
and only one person in the van, among the women, had their hair in a natural form, the form in which it was given to them at birth.
Right.
It's so easy to be beautiful in the image of others rather than our own image.
And that's because you perceive the image of others to be the standard bearer of beauty.
Precisely.
So I assume you're speaking about the hair weaves, the straightening of the hair, etc., the extensions that people put in so that they can have this long, flowing, Caucasian-looking type hair, because they, in their minds, have defined that as the hallmark of beauty. But I will bring out another point.
Because I only give that as a case.
Yes, but as you give it as a case, it's a significant point that you brought up here. But let's take the average woman who does that. If you speak to them, they will tell you that it has nothing to do with denial of self. It's because it makes their hair easier to manage. How do you respond to that?
I can't. I can't respond to it. But that is precisely what they say. My hair too tough. It's hard to manage. I have to use somebody else's hair in order to be acceptable. I can't fight that. That's something so deep that an argument and a conversation can't change it. And it goes back to the point we are saying that we are not educated into ourselves, but rather to. And so it's not me or a person, it's a movement in the culture and education which must attack that disease and that pathology that is here with us, not only in our physical self, our somatic person, but in the things we want, in the person we aspire to be, in the spouse that we hope for. There are things there that deny us.
Well, you know, on that profound statement, I'll end the first segment of the program.
It's finished already?
It's finished already. Time flies. When we come back, we'll pick up the discussion on the role of the PMC in starting to effect this change. I mean, we've just identified little aspects of it, you know. And don't worry, we will get to talk about the Christmas floods. I promise you that. But I wanted, as I had you in the studio, to get something much deeper than the distribution of relief goods. I'm not trying to downplay that, mind you, but I want to have a deep conversation. So when we come back.
Thank you.
This is Unrendered on IKTV. My guest is Mr. Oscar Allen. More when we come back.